Okay, so there's a couple things I wanted to talk about after Rampage. There's obviously a lot of discussion going on online and as the fans of Rampage about it and the judging and so on and so forth. So here is my overall honest opinion of what went down. There's kind of four things I wanted to talk about, just kind of so you guys know how the video is going to be broken down. I'm first going to give you my overall impressions of the entire event. Then I'm going to kind of talk about what are the current judging criteria as it stands now. It's going to be a super brief, a quick 30-second intro of what the current judging criteria is. Then I want to go over Brendog's run, why I think it was scored the way it was, and why and how I think it should have been scored higher, or where I think it should have sat, what I think some potential changes to judging should be. And not so much the criteria, but I guess more the philosophy behind how Rampage is judged, because there definitely is some things to change. Now, before we do that, though, I do want to introduce myself because 98% of you are not subscribed. Now, I have lived and breathed Rampage since 2012. It's been my absolute favorite event. Mostly what I think about. I've watched all of the movies around it. I've seen all of the live broadcasts. I go and try and ride down in Virgin, Utah probably twice a year the last couple of years. So I've ridden there quite a bit. I've also had the opportunity the month before Rampage this year in about mid-September to go walk around the site, and I actually put out a whole video. I'll have that linked in the description below, and got to walk the site, look at it. So hopefully I have some insights for those of you who weren't able to go there, and not just watch it, but if you haven't even stood it. I mean, I've stood on top of the rock. I've stood on top of Price is Right. So hopefully I have some insights that can be impressive. And if not, then don't watch the video. I don't really care. So first off, my overall impressions. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the judging in this section because that's basically what we're going to focus on in the rest of the video. But as kind of my quick reaction and my quick thoughts is I thought, of course, the judges were extremely harsh on Brendon Fairclough's run. I also thought the top three runs were the top three runs. I just think they were basically interchangeable. They were all super, super good. I loved them all. My personal ranking would have been Godziak first, Tyler McCall second, Brendon third. I do think Godziak's run was better than both, but I do think they were so close that you could make an argument for any order of those three. I think those three were genuinely better than the rest. I'm super bummed Tom Isted didn't crashed on his run and then due to wind was unable to do his second, because I also think his run would have scored very, very, very well. So I also was incredibly impressed at how much we've progressed since we were last at this site. 2019 was the last time we were at this site. And if you had told me then that at least 5 people were going to flip Price is Right and 1 person was going to front flip Price is Right, I would have said you were crazy. So I'm so impressed at how far the sport and technology has come to allow riders to be able to do these at like insane feats. Building off of that, I think Tom Van Steenbergen's front flip is the biggest thing done at Rampage by far. It's just mind-boggling insane. Like by far the biggest trick on one of the biggest features ever. I loved it. It's so sick. The way he just compressed and then rodeoed out of it. So cool. Awesome, awesome moment. Now, kind of going into kind of the negatives, I definitely the wind delay sucked. I think there was 2 things that really didn't help to kind of the emotional kickback. I think people were going to have emotional kickback to Brendog getting 11th anyway, because it's ridiculous. But there were 2 things that definitely didn't help. Waiting 12 hours to learn that a controversial person who's already won 4 times is winning a 5th time again. I mean, that's people were going to be upset. Like when I heard Brendon won, my heart sank, not so much because I disagreed with it. I definitely still, like I said, think Godziak should have won and Tyler should have been ahead of him. But I knew people weren't going to like that him specifically won. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's the tail whip guy. He won. Therefore, everyone's upset. Also, Geoff Golovich is not press trained, and it's very obvious. He is he competed in Rampage a long time ago. He's kind of a Vancouver North Shore mountain bike legend. He is not the person to be when Kamikawa goes, hey, why did so and so get the score they did? And they ask him, the worst person. Like there's no excuses for the way he answered questions. He said perhaps the worst possible thing he could have said after Brendon's run, saying he makes it look too easy. Um, Whoever that, by the way, he's not even a judge. Like I saw some comments online saying the head judge said he made it look too easy. No, Jeff Golovich is not one of the judges. He's the press guy for the judges. And it's he's it was a good experiment. We need to move on. I don't necessarily hate the idea of someone in the judging booth giving what they're talking about, but it should actually be what they're talking about. Because I guarantee you, the judges weren't like, he really made it look too easy. So yeah, 77. Like that's insane and ridiculous. Like there's no way that's what they were talking about. I have some ideas for why they penalized him as hard as they did, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, GF Golovich, like he made an already volatile situation nuclear. Like he ruined that moment as best. Like, oh, it's just terrible. The moment he said it, I was like major cringe, so bad. Um, Okay, let's talk about those are my overall impressions. So, as it stands right now, 30 seconds. How is Rampage judged as of right now? And how have those judging criteria kind of been applied? First off, difficulty of line. How difficult was your line in comparison to the other riders? Air and amplitude. How big were the features on your line? How big or small did you go in comparison to other riders who shared the feature? Then you have control and fluidity. How in control were you? At any point, did you look sketchy? Did you look loose and comfortable, or did you look tight and nervous? Did you ride your line with confidence and speed, or slow and timid? And then up next, tricks and style. What tricks did you perform, and then on what features? Did you straight air jumps that other riders tricked? And were your tricks more difficult than riders who shared that feature? A lot of comparison. A lot of these are directly compared to the other riders. There is no like a backflip is 10 points, a front flip is 9 points or whatever. It's all in comparison. Now, Brendon Fairclough's line, how did these criteria get applied to him? Like I said, the judges were extremely harsh on him. When we heard the score, everyone, I was watching it with my extended family and me. It's kind of the Super Bowl for us. We were all like, what on earth? We were just like, what is going on? Like, that is wild. While I do have some critiques of his line, and I had some critiques then at the time of watching it, they way too harsh. Although I don't know if I would quite say he was robbed. I know that's the kind of the hag time Brendog was robbed and stuff. Robbed from what? He definitely was robbed from a top 10 line. He should easily get that invite back if he even wants to. He probably won't come back, which is the sad part. Definitely a top run line. And I personally think it was a top 5 run. I think the run to compare his run to was Tom Van Steenbergen's. I think they had the same kind of weight as a run, even though they were two completely different philosophies on a Rampage run. Personally, my top 5, I kind of said what my top 3 was, but my top 5 would have been Simon Godziak in first, Tyler McCall in second, Brandon Semenuk in third, Tom Van Steenbergen in fourth, and then Brendon Fairclough in fifth. I think Brandon's line was was better, or arguably better, than everyone behind him, the other 5 riders, and so who ranked 6 through 10. And I do think that 5th place was a good spot for him. I loved all the raw features on his line, like everybody. And he's just such a good guy. Of course, we all love him, but that's just because we love him doesn't mean that's why he should win or get a top 3. And for that reason, what were the flaws in Brendon's run that I saw? I thought his biggest flaw in Brendon's run was that he put all of his eggs in one basket. He went, my line is going to be the most difficult to ride possible. That's all I care about. I care about technicality. I care about that's literally all I care about. And he put all of his eggs in that basket. And I think it was the most difficult line down the mountain. It's hard to argue that it wasn't. It was very loose. It was very raw. Every shoot, you're like on the edge of like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. Like super exposed and stuff. But the problem is there's 3 other categories. Now, amplitude wise, and this has been a critique I've seen people saying, well, he didn't really have a lot of amplitude stuff. He obviously had the canyon gap, which is a big amplitude feature. But when you're comparing his canyon to other people's canyons, Tyler McCall's canyon was ridiculous. Same with Tom Isted's. I mean, that's the most insane canyon ever. And so a canyon by 2019 standards is massive and crazy, and by us mere mortals is crazy. It looks small compared to Tom Van Steenbergen's. Now, he did flip it, but we'll talk about tricks in a second. We're just talking about amplitude. All of the rest of Brendon's natural features were all low amplitude features. The rock, while it is a 24-foot drop and it is difficult because you're jumping onto it, then you're falling off, it just doesn't have, I don't think it has the weight of some of these 60-foot, 70-foot, 80-foot drops on other people's lines. It's a very technical, but it's not at a high amplitude feature, or at least as big of amplitude as some of the other features on the thing. Same with his Geordie drop. That's not a big amplitude drop. Also, building off of that, by nature, since all of his features were natural and steep, that forces, well, not necessarily the steep part, but because of how natural they are and exposed, it forces him to ride them slowly. And it kind of gets this like go, stop feel to his run, which historically has never scored well at Rampage. Now, we're going to talk about that. I think we can change that. I think we can adjust some of the criteria to do that. But historically, the best winning runs are runs that are charging, are running straight down the mountain, high speed, high confidence, high control, very fluid, instead of this kind of stop and go approach that he had in his line. Definitely the top three lines had that in it. Trick-wise, the highlight of his run was the canyon flip. The no-hander on the ridge, I think, honestly hurt his run. If possible, I think he could have done it. He should have done a flip there. I mean, that's easy to say, backseat quarterback, right? Or couch quarterback. But it just looked awkward. It looked really small, and then he kind of like wriggled out. Like barely hung on. You can go watch that part. It's really hard to watch, and it definitely hurt his. I think objectively, I think it's hard to argue that hurt his run. At least the way he rode it. Even if you don't agree that the jump didn't, and then the flip at the bottom, it's a trick jump at the bottom of Rampage. Those jumps are never going to they're fine to have. They're never going to score as well as flips on step downs or canyon gaps or higher up on the mountain. Brendon's not the first rider to try to put natural lines in his Rampage run. James Dorfling in 2010, 2012, 2013, 2016, and also Remy Metallier in 2015, 2016, 2018 are both riders that I thought really try to focus on natural big mountain lines rather than these crazy big like trickable features. The highest either of those two finished was sixth place by James Dorfling in 2012. Just historically, this has been a problem in Rampage. Maybe not a problem, but it's been, and I view that these runs generally don't have the amplitude or the tricks to compete with the top runs. Now, in a video right before Rampage on the Ride Companion, Brendon and Deegs and Ollie had that interview where Brendon kind of talked about if he was a judge, how he would judge. And by his own standards, him and Deegs both said that they would want to them the best runs. To them, the best runs are those that have the most excitement top to bottom. He also said that if he were a judge, he would most likely reward more big mountain stuff. He does admit that that's because, of course he is, because that's what his kind of strengths are. But nonetheless, overall, the most wow. And I have to say, as someone who is so excited for his one, in my preview video for Rampage, I thought he had the stuff in his run to win. I thought he filled in the gaps, but I completely oversighted kind of the stuff I talked about. But I thought he did. But when he finished his run, even before the score came in, I was kind of like, ooh, that's not enough. Like, it just didn't feel like enough after being watching 70, 80-foot backflips off Price is Right. And Carson Roach's, well, and then right after that, Tom Van Steenbergen's insane front flip. I mean, it just didn't have that wow that I know that I was expecting. That's just personally how I felt. I'm sure others of you will disagree, and right on you. Like how you feel is how you should feel. But for me, it didn't have the wow I was expecting. I still think that the difficulty of his line, just how much technical it was, it could have been rewarded. Now, how are we going to reward it? Here are my solutions. I don't like complaining. I don't like pointing fingers like so many people are doing online. So I wanted to try and bring together some solutions. Okay, how can we reward this style of writing that hasn't been rewarded for so long? Like I said, we need to learn we need a way to reward technical writing. And I think the easiest place to look at that is that control and fluidity. Like we've talked about earlier, historically, we've rewarded writers who charge down the mountain fast. There's not a lot of stops or pauses in their run. It's just go, 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 and everything works out. Everything works well. And I think a lot of the runs that we see on the mountain, kind of lean into that aspect. But I think we need to have the flexibility to, okay, why are we slowing down? Are we slowing down because we're being scared and timid, or we're trying to regain control because we just lost control? Or is it because we're going into a feature that demands a slow entry speed? Does that make sense? And I think that's one way we can make some room for technical writing. Something I don't agree with is the idea that writers shouldn't be rewarded for tricking features that other people don't. Like if Brendon wants to trick every single thing down the mountain, I think he should be rewarded for that. I don't think, or wants to do something stylish. If he's going to do a trick on something and another writer decides to straight air it, he should be rewarded for that. I don't understand the big problem with that. I also struggle with the idea that Rampage is turning into slope style. While I do agree that it's been very trick dominant, and we could offset that by, again, what we talked about, rewarding kind of technical writing. The idea that it's not a free ride event and that it's a slope style event is crazy to me. Is Darkfest a slope style event or is it a free ride event? I mean, I think everyone would say that it's a free ride event, and Rampage is way more big mountain and natural than Darkfest is. So how exactly is it suddenly slope style? Because one person did a tail whip. It's just crazy. And the tricks should be judged on how difficult they are, not what tricks they are. And plus, like, how would you enforce it? Are you going to ban single crown forks? Are you going to ban bar spins and tail whips? That seems stupid. That doesn't seem like it's free ride, right? Like people are supposed to be able to do what they interpret, bring their unique skills to their line, and then we should be able to decide whose line was the best, right? Like that's the whole purpose. So banning certain tricks or banning certain bike setups, that doesn't make any sense to me. I also want to push back on the ideas that riders' lines shouldn't be as hard packed. These mind-boggling features we're watching are only possible because of modern like jump building techniques. Tom Van Sebring's front flip is not possible without a hard packed landing. It's just not. And I would rather watch him do big front flips on 670 foot step downs than not. I would rather watch people do in like Carson Storch's 360. Like he doesn't hang on to that 360 if it's soft. His bike digs in and he gets dumped right on his face. And he's probably right there in the hospital with Cam Zink right now. And so, okay, you want them more natural. What's your plan to make it more natural outside? Like, are you going to take measures outside of just like, are you going to penalize people for hard packed landings? Are you going to give them only 5 days to dig instead of 10 so they don't have time to? Are you going to give them like 40 sandbags instead of 70? Are you going to give them less diggers? Like, what's your plan? Like, how are you going to give them less things? Yeah, I don't know. Like the idea, I think we should reward more natural lines, and reward people who want to go that route rather than penalize people who want to do these big tricks on big features. I think there's a world where Rampage can have both, and it should have both. Maybe that's my opinion, but whatever. Kind of in conclusion, to me, Rampage is still the pinnacle of the sport. I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think it's doom and gloom that people are making it out to be. Obviously, everyone has their opinion on their favorite form of writing, as you should, but Rampage should be the place where all of these writing come to meet together and they're not excluded. Hence why I still think we should, like, I'm with you all that we should reward technical writing. I'm just not down to punish people for these mind boggling treats. Bienvenido's front flip over the canyon gap. Like, that's not possible without modern building techniques. The Cam Zing's backflip last year, that's not possible without modern digging tech. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. But I still think that this is the pinnacle of the sport. And I don't think this is the end of Rampage. I do think we need some changes, but I don't think that this is end of the world. If I made any sense at all, please give me a like and comment. Maybe share this with your friends who you watch Rampage with. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.
That thing is terrifying.